My name is Tony, and I may or may not be the forever host of this awesome new podcast that we're doing. It's called The Rumble Podcast. We want to share the stories of some of the amazing PFW alum who are out in the community, and also be able to shed some light on some of our wonderful training outreach courses and classes, and just the plethora of things that we have to offer here at PFW, and some of the really, really great people who make that happen. And our very first guest is Cassie Beer. She is an amazing advocate for women in the community. She's a rock star. She does it all. So, like I said, I am Tony, and I have my wonderful co-host with me, Margaret.
So I'm Margaret, and I work here at Purdue Fort Wayne, and I was asked to co-host this morning, so here we are. But I'm happy to be here and happy to meet Cassie and hear more of her story and where she got where she is.
I don't know, Cassie, do you want to introduce yourself? And
Sure, yeah. I'd love to. So yes, my name is Cassie Beer, and I am Cassie Beer. I don't know what to say. There's so many things to say. I graduated from Purdue for both my undergrad and my graduate. My graduate degree was in professional communication. I'm trying to remember. I think it was last year I graduated. 2000. I don't know. What is time?
So weird now.
Time is flying.
2021. Yes, I graduated in 2021. That's right.
2 years ago now. Or 2023
is it really?
Now.
Yeah.
So it was actually 2022 because it was last year, and I don't know what time is. So yes, so I am the Women's Fund Director at the Community Foundation. I also have a band called Rosalind and the Way, and I'm married and have 3 kids, 12, 10, and 5.
You said 3 like you had to think about it, like you weren't sure.
It's just a lot of people in my house.
It sounds like a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. So I've had a pretty unconventional, non-traditional path, I would say, to the career that I'm in right now. I actually, right out of high school, moved to Atlanta to do music in a religious setting. So I jumped in, did that, didn't go to college right away, moved to Atlanta for a couple years, played music and loved it, had a blast, moved back home to Fort Wayne, and fell in love and got married. And we moved to Chicago and loved Chicago. I lived right downtown and was still doing music and having a blast doing that. And then we had a baby. And
that changed things.
That changed things. It did, especially because our firstborn has pretty significant disabilities. So we were in Chicago, babies ourselves with this baby.
Downtown Chicago?
Yeah,
so like
just a little north of Wrigley, and 1 car in an apartment, roughing it. And after a whole year of living there with him and all of the extra needs that he had, we were in the hospital once a month. We were doing all these therapies. We were just finally looked at each other and said, "What are we doing? We have both of our families are in Fort Wayne. My mother-in-law is a retired special ed teacher. Like, what are we doing? Let's go home.
Just going back to Indiana.
Let's go back home." And it was such a great thing. We didn't feel like it maybe at first, but it was so good to come home and have a supportive community here for him. And so I really devoted several years to being his mom because of the needs that he had. And then we had another little guy a couple years later, and then our daughter a few years later too. And as they've gotten more independent, I realized like I really do want to work in a professional way, because being a mother is work, but I also really wanted to contribute something outside of the home.
And get paid for it.
So I had done my associate's degree in Chicago, and then I looked at Purdue Fort Wayne and realized I could finish my bachelor's online. Yes. And I went, that's what I need as a mom with small kids and not a lot of time. I need to be able to do this online. So I, enrolled on classes online and just started taking as many as I could fit into my schedule because I wanted to finish it quickly. And in that space of being his mom, I had this slow revelation over the years because I had this baby who had a lot of challenges. And in the beginning, it was, this baby has something wrong with him. I need to help him be different. And over time, it was this shift in perspective as I entered more into the disability community, as I learned more about him and about the world he was in. It was, no, there's not something wrong with him. It's that our world wasn't designed with him in mind.
Exactly.
And I started to really value advocacy. I started to value systems level change and evaluating the systems in our world to see who they were designed for and who they truly benefit. So this big mind shift in being his mom over these years as I'm home and going to school online. And at the end of my undergraduate year, I was like, you know what? I should actually meet some of these people I've been taking classes with in person. And I felt really guilty that I didn't actually know anybody on campus. I didn't know where anything. I literally only came to campus to get my student ID so I could use it for discounts when I went to
you have to.
Yeah, that was literally
important.
The only time I came on campus until I graduated. And I'm really ashamed of that. But I came that spring, my final spring semester. I went to some crummy little bar. They had a meet and greet for the communication department because my undergrad was in communication. And I met all of these wonderful professors that I had had online. And somehow they kindly bullied me into grad school.
Nice.
And they were like, you should do your graduate degree. And I was like, sure, I should. What is it? How does it? And they're like, and you should teach Com 114. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sign me up.
Oh my gosh, these people are awesome. They're doing my job.
It
Crummy
was
little bars.
really
and then you
good.
go to grad
I'm
school.
telling you, Dr. Stephen Carr was there, Dr.
bars.
Sarah LeBlanc, and they were.
Oh my gosh, they were all at a bar?
And Kevin Stoller, and they all were like, so what are you doing this fall? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, we know. And so they got me.
That's awesome.
They
Margaret, we're going to get with all of them and we're going to go to a bar.
Yeah, what was the bar? We just do the same thing.
I don't know. It was the one out north. I don't know. I was
It's
like,
fine. I'm sure we can find a crummy bar.
The one out north, we can just try them all.
Yeah. There's no shortage of crummy bars in Fort
Do
Wayne.
a beer crawl.
And
beer
you should
crawl,
come with us
crawl.
because then you can also help us recruit.
Just recruit.
Hey.
What are you doing with your time? So then I started that fall and was teaching for the first time and going to graduate school.
That's crazy.
And raising 3 kids. And I look back and go, how did all that happen? So I loved teaching Com 114 because no one wants to take it. And it was this wonderful.
That's why you love it?
Yeah, because
So
my personality is like,
there?
oh, you hate this, huh? I'm going to show you.
I'm going to make you like it.
Huh? We're going to have fun.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
I get that.
And I just really, really loved that. And I loved getting to share with them. For those listening, if you didn't take Com 114, it's basically public speaking. And getting to show these students, no, listen, you owe it to yourself to know how to effectively communicate your brilliance to the world, your ideas, your unique thoughts, your perspective. You owe that to yourself to be able to, at least, even if you don't give big presentations in front of auditoriums of people, to be able to stand in front of a room of your peers and effectively communicate your ideas so that you get heard, so that you get credit for those ideas, so that you have more power in places that you should have power.
That's awesome.
Helping them to have
you
that
convinced
shift.
me.
Yeah, I feel like
I am not a fan of public speaking. You just made me want to take your class, even though you're not teaching anymore.
I loved it. It was really fun. And then COVID struck my second semester of grad school.
Yep.
And
good old Rona.
Yeah. It was that spring semester, and I was just so truly worried for my students. I know so many of them were suddenly in perilous situations where they were either working as frontline workers in grocery stores and in places like that, and they were put in harm's way, or they were out of work or in a home with families, or possibly in, situations of violence they now didn't have a way to get out of.
Yeah.
They didn't have access to basic resources. And it was so emotionally draining to worry about all of these students that I was really invested in and cared for.
Yeah.
And I looked at my husband, who's been a public school teacher for 15 years, and was like, how do you do that? How do you carry this, like, care for all of these kids in your heart and still function? So I knew that I wasn't going to be in teaching for the long game. Like, I'm so grateful for it. And maybe it'll come back full circle at some point. But so I started to go, okay, as this grad program wraps up, I want to look for something else. I didn't know what it would be. I just knew that I was decent at communicating. I loved doing research, but I loved solving problems too. I loved being out in the community. And I also just tend to, like, casually stalk people that I think are awesome.
Say more on that.
Yeah.
Can
So
you elaborate a little bit, or do we need to take that part out?
In post.
When you see people doing cool things in the community, it's going like, okay, what are they doing? Who are the circles that they're moving in? Because I want to be around people like that. People who are trying to make our community better. People who are taking their ideas and running with it, not just sitting around talking about their ideas. So there is a woman named Allison Gerardo I had casually stalked.
Okay.
Because I thought she was so cool. She helped start, she's one of the co-founders of Middle Waves Music Festival.
Oh, yeah.
She was at Fort Wayne for a while, just doing these very cool things. And I just had watched her from afar and gone, she's doing cool stuff. If there's ever an opportunity to professionally stalk her, I would. And as
professionally stalk with a purpose.
Right.
A
Move
positive
from
purpose.
casual stalking to professional stalking.
Yeah.
And my second to last semester of grad school, she shared a job posting at the Community Foundation, which is where she was working. And I thought, I don't even know what this job title means, but I'm going to apply for it because I think she's cool. And it was Donor Engagement Specialist. And I was like, I don't know what any of those words
You're
really
going to
mean.
engage the donors.
In a special way.
Yeah.
Very special.
They're very special.
So I applied and managed to convince them that I could figure out what that job title meant.
Because you're a great communicator.
Right. You can talk your way into anything.
Yeah.
And so my last semester of grad school, I transitioned out of teaching Com 114 and transitioned into this role. And it was really great because it taught me what a community foundation is, because they are very unique entities. They're a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit, but it's really a nonprofit for nonprofits in a lot of ways. So it works differently than, say, like the Rescue Mission or Community Harvest Food. Like, it's very different. So I got a really great sense of what it does. And I got to meet a lot of amazing people, because that fancy title really just means you get to have great relationships and conversations with people who care about their community and want to invest in it.
Yeah.
So it was really great. But also, I learned that I am someone who cares really deeply about the things I care about, and I want to fight for them and advocate for them. And that role was really about making other people's dreams come true, which is great. I love to make other people's dreams come true, but I also really want to put my weight behind an issue I care about. So in that first year, there was this project brewing at the Community Foundation called the Women's Fund. And it was a new initiative at the Community Foundation. It was just getting started. But as I was there, the excitement and support for this initiative in the community was growing and growing and growing to the point where it could support a staff person. And I was like,
I volunteer.
Pick me.
and I do that. And I really care about this. So I've moved into that role. I just passed the 1-year mark
Woo woo.
at the Women's Fund. And it is the most challenging and the most rewarding thing outside of being a parent that I have ever been a part of. It's really a special thing.
That's awesome. And I'm looking here at my notes, and it says that you have done so many great things that led up to this. And it's sort of like your destiny, like we talked about earlier. Like, this job is a perfect fit for you. Your graduate school experience helped prepare you for that. and this podcast, and now here we are.
Yes. Yes. Looking back, I think when I was in grad school, I was going, I don't really know what kind of role is going to get to mesh all of these great things that I love. And could not have ever foreseen my role in the Women's Fund. I get to utilize all of my communication education. It's all about how to do interpersonal communication. Look at the person in front of me, the donor in front of me, the funder in front of me, and manage how to most effectively connect with that person and communicate my message to them in a way that resonates. It's also a lot of public speaking. I probably do 2 or 3 larger events every month at least.
Really?
Speaking in front of larger groups of people, sharing about the Women's Fund. And that's a lot of public speaking.
Do you ever get nervous?
No.
No. Do you like picture everybody like in their underwear or something? Or is that what you learned in grad school and professional communication?
I did not teach that. So no, I mean, that's not fair. I do get nervous sometimes because I do care a lot, but I don't feel like it shows. I think the trick is really going back to what I said before of knowing that what you have to share is important and more important than my nerves.
Right, yeah.
And also, I forget where I heard this, but it has always stuck with me. If you're on a plane, get aboard a plane to go fly across the ocean, and the pilot gets on and goes, I'm not feeling real confident about this. I'm not really sure how to do it, but here we go. As passenger, you are suddenly...
Pass.
No, can I get off now?
Is the door still open? Because I'm off.
Right.
Yeah.
But when the pilot gets on and says, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a great flight today. I'm so honored to be your pilot. Sit back, let the stewardess get, you're okay.
Yeah.
I can take it. So I try to adapt that too.
Fake it till you make it.
Because when you are watching someone present and you can tell that they're nervous and they say that you're like, oh, we're going to sit here.
Don't say it.
Listen to this.
Push through.
Wait, I say it all the time though.
Well, I think this is about learning. So.
I'm about being transparent. If I'm nervous,
I think there's that too. There's authenticity too.
Yeah.
So I try to be a calm pilot when I'm sharing the message today. Yeah. And also, I remember thinking, I really enjoy research. I love doing it. I love talking about it. I love trying to figure out how to apply it. But I didn't really see outside of being in the academic setting how I was going to use that. And so I've been so excited that my work is really research driven. That's one of our 3 main vehicles that we do in the Women's Fund is we're committed to research. And so I've gotten to use that more than I anticipated. And I've been really, really happy about that. And I also just so enjoyed the in-class conversations in grad school. I remember sitting in the first couple of classes and regretting that I had done so much of my undergrad online.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I know there is value in it, and I could not have gone to undergrad in person as a mother. That in that season of my life, it would have been a disaster. But I just valued that in-person experience so much for graduate school because I was exposed to people who were so different than I was, and to learn so much from my peers around what they interpreted from a study that we would read or, their interpretation of things. It was so, so valuable and taught me so much around being a critical thinker, not always jumping in with my opinion because I tend to do that. And it was so valuable, and it taught me so much in those spaces. And I looked forward to it so much every week. I'd be like racing out the door to get to class because the conversations were so rich. And so, yeah, grad school was such an amazing preparation for moving into a role that's centered in research, that's centered in advocacy, that's centered at taking a critical look at the systems we have in our community to see if they're truly serving all of our members equally, no matter what their gender is.
That's great. Like that whole last 2 minutes was like the best soundbite for PFW grad school. And like we should do something with that. So if you had
I
to,
think we are doing something with that.
oh yeah, we are. Rumble podcast.
Anybody recording this? This is
Is this thing on? So if you had to, or if you could experience grad school again,
yes.
would you? And if
Yes.
you would, what would you do different? Well, you gotta wait till I finish reading the question.
I know. I'm just trying to say. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I would not do it during a global pandemic, would be number one, because we did have to move so much online. And I could feel really the decrease in my engagement when that happened.
Yeah.
It had to happen. There's no other way we could have all carried on in person. And I am grateful that we did it to carry on. But I did feel like I missed out on a lot of conversation and relationship that happened. But no, I would 100% do grad school again. The professors were so helpful and so encouraging. And I still, when I'm like right now, I just finished another research project and I'm like, hey, Dr. Dixon, you wanna look at something for me? Because I value their input so much.
Yes.
They're so interesting and reflective and thoughtful. And there was never a time where I asked for help or I was made to feel like I wasn't smart enough or I was like a burden on them. And, as someone who didn't go to college right out of high school, who was a mom coming back to grad school, like huge imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I finished my undergrad online, like kind of felt like cheating to do it. I look back and say that's a ridiculous thing to think. But in the moment, it was like, it felt like my first experience of college in some ways because I had done my undergrad online.
Yeah.
And I'm in this grad space and there are such brilliant people in the room. And it was immediately like, I am not smart enough to be here. And every single one of my professors, Dr. Kelsey, Dr. Carr, Dr. LeBlanc, like were so adamant of you belong here. You deserve to be here. You have things. So they were like basically
That's
me
awesome.
to my Com 114 students.
Yeah.
And they remained that. They remained like such cheerleaders through the whole program and beyond, like still. And it was just such a valuable gift to have them still as such encouragers.
That's great. What's one thing that you want people to, like in closing, like what's one thing that you want people to know about your organization and what you're doing now? Because you speak so passionately about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that just let everybody know what you want to know about them.
Right. So the Women's Fund is committed to what I like to say are upstream solutions. Bishop Desmond Tutu said that we need to pull people out of the river, but at some point we have to go upstream and figure out why are they falling in. So the Women's Fund is really committed to those upstream solutions. So it's research, education from the standpoint of community awareness, and advocacy. What are the policies looking at the local and the state level that affect women and girls and gender equality in our community? And we're devoted to doing those things for women's economic security, for their personal safety, and for young women and girls in our community. So that's what we're all about. And that's how we're hoping to make change in our communities as we really get this new organization off the ground.
That's
Sounds
awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, and we cannot thank you enough for coming here and being our first guest
I'm happy to.
on our podcast. Cassie Beer, Executive Director, ED at the Women's Fund, doing great things. And we're just really happy that you came here and did this. I wasn't as nervous as what I thought I would be.
You did great.
Can you take that out of post? Because I'm not supposed to say I'm nervous.
Well, I'm really honored to be here. I think this is a really great podcast idea, and I can't wait to listen to all of the episodes that you produce.
Thank you.